At 85 years old, with less than 24 hours left to live, she finally said the words that would destroy everything her family believed. 5 words. That's all it took. It wasn't Daniel. It was him. The machines kept beeping, the fluorescent lights kept humming, but the world her family knew, that ended the second those words left her lips. Because what she'd been hiding for 53 years didn't just change one story, it changed everything. Picture the scene. Hartford Memorial Hospital, room 447, March 2024. The woman lying in that bed, we'll call her Rose, had maybe hours left. Her children knew it, her grandchildren knew it, even Rose knew it. Her body had made its decision, and bodies don't negotiate at 85. But here's what nobody expected. Rose hadn't been confused for weeks. No dementia, no morphine-induced hallucinations. Her mind was sharp, painfully sharp, right up until the end. And that's what made what happened next so devastating. Because when someone's dying and confused, you can dismiss their words. You can comfort yourself later, tell yourself they didn't know what they were saying. But Rose knew exactly what she was saying. Her daughter, Patricia, was adjusting the pillow when Rose grabbed her wrist, not gently, with urgency. "I need to tell you something," Rose whispered. "About Daniel." Patricia froze. Nobody had spoken that name in their family for over 50 years. But here's where it gets strange. Daniel Whitmore. To most people, that name means nothing. But in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, that name is shorthand for one thing: guilty. In 1971, Daniel Whitmore was convicted of causing the death of 7-year-old Sarah Brennan, the little girl who disappeared during a 4th of July celebration and was found 3 days later in Oakwood Creek. The case destroyed that town. Parents locked their doors for the first time in decades. Children weren't allowed to play outside without supervision. And Daniel? He was sentenced to 15 years, served 12, released in 1983, a broken man. He died alone in 2009, his name still synonymous with child killer in every newspaper archive from here to Pittsburgh. But what if everything, and I mean everything, everyone believed about what happened that day was wrong? What if the real person responsible had been standing there the entire time, watching an innocent man take the fall, and nobody questioned it? That's exactly what Rose revealed in that hospital room. And once she started talking, she couldn't stop. Let's go back to July 4th, 1971. Rose was 32 years old then, young mother, married to a well-respected banker named Thomas. They had 3 kids, a house on Maple Street, and a picture-perfect life that looked exactly like everyone else's in Millbrook. The town always gathered at Riverside Park for the 4th of July. Fireworks, barbecue, kids running wild while parents drank lemonade and pretended to watch them. Rose was there with her family. So was little Sarah Brennan. So was Daniel Whitmore, the quiet 24-year-old who worked at the hardware store and mostly kept to himself. And so was him. Now, Rose didn't name this person in 1971. And here's why that matters. Because the person everyone trusted, the person whose story was never questioned, was Rose's own brother, James Hartford, the deputy sheriff. Picture this. You're in a small town in 1971. A child goes missing. Everyone's panicking. Who are you going to believe? The awkward hardware store clerk who was seen near the creek around the same time? Or the deputy sheriff who's been protecting your town for 6 years? It's not even a question. But Rose saw something that afternoon that didn't match the story James told police. She saw James walking toward the creek path with Sarah. She remembered it specifically because Sarah was crying and James was holding her hand, leading her away from the crowd. Rose thought nothing of it at the time. James was law enforcement. If a child was upset, of course he'd help. But 20 minutes later, when Sarah's mother started screaming that her daughter was missing, James was the first one organizing the search, and he's the one who suggested they talk to Daniel Whitmore. "I saw him near the creek earlier, acting strange, watching the kids," he told the police chief. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? Now here's where Rose made the decision that would haunt her for the next 5 decades. She didn't say anything. Not that day, not during the investigation, not during the trial. But here's what you need to understand. It wasn't because she didn't realize something was wrong. 3 days after Sarah was found, Rose was at her brother's house for dinner. This was before Daniel's arrest, before anyone had been charged. She watched James sitting at the table, calm, eating pot roast like nothing had happened. And she asked him, casually, "Jim, did you see that little Brennan girl before she went missing? I could have sworn you saw me walking with her toward the creek path." The way James looked at her in that moment, she told Patricia this in the hospital room. His face went completely blank. Then he smiled. "You must be misremembering, Rosie. I was with the other deputies by the main pavilion all afternoon. Got 3 witnesses who'll confirm it." It wasn't what he said. It was the way he said it, like a warning wrapped in brotherly affection. Rose never brought it up again. Because here's the thing about families in small towns in 1971. You protected your own, especially when your own was law enforcement, especially when questioning him meant questioning everything. So when Daniel Whitmore went to trial and James testified that he'd seen Daniel acting suspicious near where Sarah disappeared, Rose sat in that courtroom and said nothing. 12 years Daniel served. 12 years Rose stayed quiet. And every single day, the weight got heavier. Now you might be thinking, why didn't she say something later, after Daniel got out of prison, after James died? And that's the devastating part of this story. Because silence doesn't stay small, it metastasizes. Rose told Patricia that by the time Daniel was released in 1983, the lie had been repeated so many times that it turned into fact. Newspaper articles, court records, town history. Daniel Whitmore, convicted child killer. How do you unring that bell? And there's something else, something Rose admitted with tears streaming across her weathered face in that hospital room. She was scared. James died in 1998. Heart attack, big funeral. Everyone in Millbrook talked about what a hero he'd been, dedicated lawman, pillar of the community. By then, Rose had convinced herself that maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe her memory was faulty. Maybe she really had misremembered. That's what 50 years of silence does. It makes you doubt your own eyes. But then something happened in 2009 that brought it all back. Daniel Whitmore died, alone in a studio apartment in Scranton. The local paper ran a small obituary. Daniel Whitmore, 62, convicted in 1971 death of Sarah Brennan. Even in death, that's all he was. Rose cut out that obituary, kept it in her Bible. Patricia found it later after Rose's confession. The paper was worn thin from being folded and unfolded, like Rose had looked at it hundreds of times over 15 years. Like she'd been trying to build the courage to do what she finally did in that hospital room. So March 2024, room 447. Rose is dying and she can't carry it anymore. She told Patricia everything, every detail, the timeline, what she saw, what James said at dinner, how the pieces never fit the way everyone claimed they did. Daniel didn't do it, Rose said. James did, and I let an innocent man go to prison because I was too afraid to speak up against my own brother. Patricia called her siblings into the room. Rose repeated the story 3 times, making sure they all heard it. Then she said something that Patricia says she'll never forget. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but Daniel deserves the truth, even if it's 50 years too late." Rose died 8 hours later, but before she did, she made Patricia promise something. "Don't let this die with me.
Now, here's where it gets complicated. Rose's confession didn't just change Daniel's legacy, it blew up her entire family. Because James Hartford, the man Rose accused, was their uncle, their hero, the man who bounced them on their knee and took them fishing. Some of Rose's children believed her immediately. Others refused, called it deathbed delusion. But Patricia did something that changed everything. She contacted a lawyer, then a journalist, then the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. And what they found was stunning. The original case file had inconsistencies nobody had ever questioned. James's timeline didn't match witness statements. The evidence against Daniel was entirely circumstantial, and most of it came from James's testimony. Even the location where Sarah was found didn't match the route Daniel would have taken from the hardware store.
But it matched exactly where James said he'd been searching that afternoon. In April 2024, 1 month after Rose died, Pennsylvania's Attorney General announced they were reviewing the case. Daniel Whitmore's conviction was officially vacated in August, 53 years after he was arrested, 15 years after he died. So here's what this story really comes down to. Rose Hartford carried a secret for 53 years, a secret that destroyed an innocent man's life, a secret that let a guilty man die as a hero, and in her final hours, she chose truth over comfort. But here's the question that haunts me about this story, and I want you to think about this. Was her deathbed confession brave, or was it just 53 years too late? Some people say Rose redeemed herself by speaking up before she died, that Daniel's name was finally cleared and not matters. Others say the damage was done, that Daniel died alone, hated, branded a child killer, and no posthumous vindication can give him back those years. What do you think? Because here's the reality. Rose's confession didn't just change history, it forced everyone who knew this story to confront an uncomfortable truth. That silence isn't neutral, that looking away is a choice, and that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. The Brennan family released a statement in September saying they finally had closure, knowing the real story of what happened to Sarah. Daniel Whitmore's name has been removed from the list of convicted offenders. A small memorial was placed at his grave in Scranton. It reads, "Innocent, finally free." Rose's family is still divided. Some haven't spoken since the confession, but Patricia says she doesn't regret honoring her mother's final wish. The truth mattered to her at the end, she told reporters, and it should matter to all of us. If this story made you think about the weight of secrets and the cost of silence, let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories that expose hidden truths, subscribe, because this channel is just getting started. Truth doesn't have an expiration date, even if it takes 53 years to surface.